Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I have the privilege of showing to you an interview that I did with Rational Typology. They're a YouTube channel that interviews various people of different Myers-Briggs types, and they ask a series of questions to see how do each Myers-Briggs type answer specific questions differently. So it's a little bit different than what you're used to with my other interviews, especially if you've already watched my interview with Kristen. But you should still get a lot of enjoyment out of it, especially if you really like my awkwardness. Because, man, as one person worded it over on their channel, because they already have it uploaded, Paul gave me a headache because I'm an N-type. So, hope you enjoy my answers. I was put on the spot a little bit, so if you want me to clarify, let me know in the comment section. And I hope my community gets a kick out of their style of interviewing. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic. God bless, and here's hoping we can have an interview the other way around with them here on this channel. Bye for now.
Hello and welcome back to our channel. We're here with Paul today, and Paul is an ISTJ.
Well, hello everyone. As they mentioned, my name is Paul. I'm so used to that being the intro of my own channel, so it's nice that someone beat me to it. I would just say that I have a YouTube channel. It's called The Catholic Gaming Nerd, and that's actually how these guys met me. Was they saw a couple of my videos and they said, "Would you like to do an interview?" And despite all the technical difficulties, we somehow made it work, and I'm just really grateful for their persistence. I also am a kind of a diehard gamer, if you haven't noticed by the background. I also am really strong in my Catholic faith. My Aunt Mary actually just got me this keychain that looks like the Deathly Hallows symbol, but it actually has the cross on it. And I would say that talking about like mission trips and going to a bunch of conferences is something that's one of my biggest pastimes as well. I'm also an author. I'll, I guess, talk about my books in a later section. And I sometimes like to do public speaking. Doesn't sound very ISTJ when I word it like that, but once we get into the more specifics about how my brain works, you'll start to realize where it's like, oh, okay, now it makes sense.
And I'll link all of your links down below so people can find you.
Oh, much appreciated.
Cool. All right. What's important to you and why?
The most important thing to me, again, is my faith. Like, obviously, I'm not going to compromise on that. Just because I like talking about Myers-Briggs doesn't mean I'm going to completely abandon my faith either. It's just that the faith is so much more contained. Like, obviously, within the Catholic Church, we have traditions that have been around since the time of Christ. We just word them differently because audiences, have developed the language of English, for example. They didn't have English when the church first existed. I just use stuff on the side as like a hobby or something that I like to do for fun, and then that usually leads into elements of my faith. So I would say that's the most important thing. But in terms of what do I value, then I would say loyalty, honesty, dedication. Like basically, if you're like what these guys did, I'm talking to the audience right now. What these two did was they couldn't get a hold of me right away, not for lack of trying, it was mostly due to technical difficulties. And they just kept going and going and going and like, we still want to do the interview. We still want to do the interview. And I'm just like, I love it. This is great. It shows that they're loyal and passionate and dedicated because that's usually what I do to other people. So it's so nice to see that someone else is willing to just put in the effort to say like, no, you are not a waste of time. We really, really, really want this.
Yeah, cool. Cool. How do you relate to yourself?
Could you rephrase the question?
Okay, if you were to tell somebody about yourself, but it had to be a letter, how would you do it?
What do you mean a letter?
Like, you couldn't like show them, I guess.
Oh, okay. So like if I were to write on a piece of paper or
Yeah.
something. Okay, so I would probably write something like, "Hello, person. My name is Paul, and one of my favorite things to do is to make videos on YouTube that hopefully will create more communication between people so that people don't misunderstand one another. I'm also an avid gamer and a diehard advocate of my Catholic faith, so perhaps if we were to ever talk, then we could talk about the faith, gaming, Myers-Briggs, and anything related to psychology and the study of the human brain. Sincerely, a hopeful lifetime friend.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
That,
lovely.
yeah. That was
Thank you.
that was such a tea answer. That's kind of what I was hoping for. It's like a really good example of like a SI in combination with TU.
Yeah, that's definitely what I was going for of the whole thinking out loud thing.
How do you have fun?
Well, again, it goes back to the gaming, but when I'm not gaming, obviously I can't do that all the time or my eyes would be like bleeding. I also like to go swimming, so like I have a lake near my house that I can walk to. The local swimming pool is a steal of a price. It only costs me $2,
Oh, that's really cool.
which
Yeah.
does your society use pounds instead of
No,
dollars?
Australian dollars.
We use dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, it would probably be more like
Yeah,
$3.
something like
But
that.
either way,
Cheap.
it's like a really cheap price, like the equivalent of 200 pennies if you still have those.
We got cents.
Probably about as much as it would cost you to buy a McDonald's cheeseburger.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
would cost $2, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that much. Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's something that I could do like 100 times and it wouldn't even cost that much.
That's cool.
And then I do occasionally like really exciting things like roller coasters, but because I'm not an extroverted sensor, I don't seek those thrills. It's more of like if someone says, "Hey, Paul, you want to go to the theme park?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I've got nothing better to do. I'll just get a lot of sunscreen."
Yeah, cool. How do you know you did something well?
I think for me, because I'm my own worst critic, I tend to be very overly critical of myself, and I usually use like past failings as a determiner for the future. So, like, if, for example, in the past I messed up while socializing with someone, I'll tend to make that as like oh, I must be bad at socializing because in the past this happened. So I have a hard time distinguishing between a new scenario. So I
Mm.
guess for me, success means if someone said I was successful before, then I'll automatically assume I must be successful again. So if I did a good public speech, then I'll say I must be good at YouTube videos that involve me talking to the camera because I've talked to live audiences before.
Mhm.
So it's all about the past, basically.
Right. And then how do you know you did something poorly? Is it similar or?
I would say so, but usually I'm even more self-critical when it comes to my failures because I was raised in a household where they said, if you're going to do a job, do it right, like don't do it half-heartedly. So a lot of times I think about like, am I missing something or am I doing this exactly as the procedures say? Like if the procedures say, make sure that like I currently, this is my last day of training at Walgreens to be a stalker.
Mhm.
So most of my job involves putting the food on the shelf, but there has to be a certain order. Like it has to be from expires first to expires last. So sometimes I think, okay, this expires in 1 day. And if I get it wrong, or the manager's going to get mad at me because I wasn't exactly precise. Or I'll also say, like, oh no, I only did half of the shelf, but my shift is over. I should probably report this to the manager and see if I did good enough or if they were disappointed that I didn't get absolutely everything filled.
Okay.
Because I'm in training, my hours are not like standard part-time. They're like very short hours so that I can get a feel of the training so that maybe I can get hired later.
Do you seek feedback to see if you've done something well or poorly? Would
I guess that's a good way of wording it. Yeah, because like a lot of times, a lot of my feeling type friends will say like, "Oh my gosh, Paul, that was so sweet of you for saying that." And I'll be like, "Oh, I guess that was a good thing."
Cool.
Whereas when I talk, I tend to think of it as I'm just talking whatever the first thing that comes to my head is.
Mhm.
So a lot of times I'm not even aware whether I'm complimenting or criticizing until someone says it, because I'm more of just like, I speak it how it is.
Cool. Cool.
I've gotten better at it over time, of course. I've gotten to the point where I can say, like, okay, I actually want to compliment this person. I just hope they don't take it badly, like the last person did 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, right.
But developing that inferior function means, okay, I got to take some risks.
Cool. How do you measure success? As in either for yourself or in the world, what does success look like for you?
In the world, I'm not really sure because there are like corrupt politicians and businessmen that I think like their definition of success is having a lot of people and a lot of money. And I don't really like either of those. To
Mhm.
me, I find success as at least one person got something out of what I did. So, say I'm giving a speech to 500 people, but one person says, Paul, you outright changed my life. That'll be better than if all 50 people said, wow, that was a great speech and it was well paced and it was pleasant to watch, but they didn't get anything out of it. Then they went home the next day and they just said, what, you did a speech? Huh? I didn't remember a word of it.
Yeah.
Then that wouldn't be successful to me. Or say I had 1,000 subscribers, but they didn't comment on my videos a whole lot.
Mm.
Or if they did, it was one of those boring copy and paste comments that anyone can do. I wouldn't like that. With my current company of fans, a lot of my loyal fans make these really drawn out, thoughtful comments. They come to my live streams and they say, I don't feel like I'm neglected because there's so few people in the live streams. So, in a manner of speaking, I kind of don't want my channel to grow because if it grows too much, then I might get, say, 50 people in the live stream and people say, why are you ignoring my comments? And I'll be like, because there's so many of you. But when there's only like 4 people in a live streams, I feel like I have a blast because I don't like big crowds. They want to feel heard. It's a win-win for both of us.
Yeah. There are some really lovely commenters on YouTube. Like I know YouTube commenters can be like all over the place, but there's some really
Right.
lovely ones that it is nice to have like some kind of connection there.
I think so too.
Would it be fair to say it's the quantity of positive experience shared or produced?
I guess that would be one way of wording it, but I think I would also say how the person is positively influenced would be another.
Hmm.
Like if someone were to say, Paul, you're a really cool person, I probably wouldn't take that very well because that's such a vague statement.
Yeah.
But if someone said, Paul, you are cool because, in fact, I'll actually use a real example. I have 2 friends of mine who are ENFP, and they're both happily married now, but I knew them before they were married. And as they were getting married, my friend Danielle, she said, oh my gosh, Paul, we've been around you so much that we've learned how to be more structured. And so we actually got a wedding planner. So my structured side, and that's actually how she talks because I mimic voices, um, that that was something that was really hard for her to do because being an ENFP, structure out the window for them. But because I was structured, they said, you know what? That might be a good thing for us to do.
Mm.
And so I taught them how to be more like me. And so I thought I should probably return the favor. So then in our future hangouts, because again, being ENFPs, they're not like, oh, we're married, so we're ditching you. They still act exactly the same now as they did then. They're just together more frequently.
Yeah.
And I would say like, okay, let's have a loose agenda so that I'm not like planning out every single move like I used to. Or they'll say, what do you want to do, Paul? And I'll say, you know what? Maybe this time I'll let you guys decide. And they're like, you're being more spontaneous. So we learn from each other like a seesaw effect. And
Mm.
I think it really helps us to improve ourselves, but at the same time, we're not totally losing our sense of self because I usually still plan a loose agenda and they're still usually like, eh, whatever you want, Paul, is good for us. So we're still each other's types, but we're learning to slightly appreciate the opposite letter approach.
What things do you have little or no interest in, and why?
I have almost no interest in philosophy or searching for the deeper meaning behind things, which may seem like an insult to you guys being
Oh, it's not. I'm just surprised
introverted.
that you're a Catholic.
Yeah, like whenever I try to get into philosophy, just because I'm like, maybe I'm overreacting, let me give this a try, I either fall asleep
Yeah.
or no, I literally fell asleep when we were watching a documentary of St. Thomas Aquinas because I was like, I can't handle all of this anima of the soul and the dualistic nature of God. That's just too much for my brain to keep up with.
Yeah.
Or I get a massive migraine, or I end up shouting at people because I'm like, why does it matter if 1 + 1 = 2? Like, who cares? Just do it. I also have little interest in people that have anger management. Well, I guess that's more of an annoyance than a little interest, but like, I prefer people who are calm and collected
Mm.
and generally speaking think things through before they talk. I would also say that something that interests me very little is something that's not realistic. So I don't really like anime that much because the proportions are all off and the mouth movement is usually the only thing that's animated, whereas obviously as human beings we have fluctuations in our body, like you might tilt your head or you might like do a little crack of the smile, whereas in anime they'll have like this frozen facial expression and only their mouth is moving, as you can see right now. And it's like no one is like that unless you're actually straining your facial muscles.
That's interesting because I can actually relate to that with some anime where it's just like, no, I can't get into this because it's not, it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know because you guys are both introverts, obviously you're not going to be the most animated. And I know you might be thinking, well, Paul, you're so animated for being an introvert. It's because introversion and shyness are not the same definition. I
Yeah.
would be classified as an outgoing introvert. I definitely have my moments where I'm more quiet, but usually I get more talkative if people are very, very introverted. But then around the extroverted types, I tend to be like, I'll let you guys do the talking.
Yeah.
And I'll
Absolutely.
chime in when I get an opening, which most of my extroverted friends are really good at that. So I'm
Cool.
really blessed in that department.
What things do you wish you had known or learned sooner?
I wish I had known about Myers-Briggs a lot sooner because that's helped me so much with
Hmm.
communication. I used to be very bad at picking up on social cues, and I used to be very bad at knowing how to explain my own emotions. And
Mm.
so once I learned that, like, oh, there's actually a pattern behind how these people communicate, and it's not just that I am the exception,
Hmm.
it's that I'm just one type. That really helped me a lot because being an introverted sensor, I like to put things into categories. I guess you could say I like to put things in boxes. So every ENTP and every ENFP viewer is probably like, how dare you, Paul, that's watching this. But that really helps my brain out a lot because I can, like, for example, take you, Nina. I could say, that's really weird to say because my sister's name is Nina as well. So I gotta adjust to that. I could say like, okay, you're an INFJ, so therefore that means that your communication style is going to be a little bit more abstract and more like you're not going to be as direct and forward as I am. So I have, therefore, because of the way the function stack is organized, I have to be willing to hear a more drawn out explanation
Yeah.
and then ask questions to put it into more simple
Yeah.
terminology. And then when I heard that you were INTJ, I thought, oh, well, because he has extroverted thinking, he's going to be more precise, but because he has introverted intuition, he's probably going to get into a couple of abstract stuff. So I have to brace myself for that. And so learning about Myers-Briggs and being able to ask, what type are you? Oh, I'm an ENFP. Okay, I know how to communicate with you now. That's helped me form so many friendships, and it's even helped me keep a couple of friendships because otherwise I would have just been like, oh man, this person's talking gibberish. I can't understand a word they're saying.
I find it really almost taxing to listen to high S, high F people. And it's not because there's anything wrong with them. It's because the functions talk to each other, and it kind of it's hard for me to pay attention. So
Have
I
I been too taxing to you?
no, because you're talking with TE, and so it's like I understand that bit fine. And then
Okay, that's good.
yeah, with your group, it's not really an issue because it's like we both got TE. But with like the ESFJs,
Hmm.
the I find them really hard to pay attention to in like a long conversation. So I try to like I try to like phrase what they're saying in a more abstract way so I can pay attention to it internally.
I guess that makes sense because, like, when I'm talking to, say, an INFJ, I usually have to say, like, well, let me compare it to this example that happened 10 years ago. Then they can say, oh, well, that's not what I was thinking, but at least you get what I'm trying to say conceptually
Yeah.
because I can relate it to something in my past.
Yeah. And I find it fascinating when people with high T and S can list all the different boxes, like you said, as well, because I just can't do it. So when people can, that's interesting.
I almost wish this was a two-way interview because I would love to just dissect how your brain is so different.
What's a problem you see in society, or multiple problems? Up to you.
I think one of the biggest things, because I don't want to really get into politics, that's not really something I'm well versed at. It's not really something I like talking about because people get heated. And as I said earlier, I don't like people yelling or shouting or thinking before they act. But I would say one of my biggest problems with society is that people act too much like sheep. In other words, sheep always follow their leader no matter what. And
Mhm.
even if their leader walks off a cliff, the sheep will be like, my leader did it, so therefore I'll do it. So society has a tendency to have a mob mindset where,
Mhm.
like in my society, it's common practice for females to shave their legs, for example. And conceptually, I can get why they would do that. It's like, okay, sometimes it's hot, less hair means more ventilation. Okay, I get that. But sometimes they're like, if I don't, the people will make fun of me. And it's like, does that matter? Like, why not just think for yourself? Do you want to shave your legs or don't you? Why don't you just make up your own mind and think about it objectively? If you want to shave your legs, cool. But don't do it because other people are telling you to. Do it because it makes you comfortable. And I've seen a couple of girls here that are just like, I'm just going to be a rebel. I'm just going to let my legs be hairy. And then I say, honestly, that actually kind of looks good. I don't know why you're complaining about that. Or if people like base their values off of not wanting to be made fun of in society, where they're just like, you know what? Because everyone else is doing it, I want to do it. And that's always baffled me because I'm like, what made them in charge? What rule in, say, the Constitution or the courtroom laws or the Bible or the Catechism did it say that you have to follow all these rules? There's no such thing as a gospel according to America. So why are you treating these very subjective, oftentimes emotionally charged methods as doctrinal truth?
Mhm. Cool. If you could change one law in society, what would that be and why? And it could be anywhere in the world that you're aware of that a law is either wrong or you could make one up as well.
I would. This is a really hard question for me because I tend to be a rule follower.
Yeah, cool.
And so it's really hard for me to think like rules are bad. But I would say that any rule that goes against the dignity of life, I can't think of any off the top of my head. But if there's a rule that says something like in China, there's a rule that says like families can only have this many kids.
Mhm.
It's like, why is that a thing? Like, is overpopulation really that bad? Like, do you really hate human life that much? I mean, obviously being a Catholic, I might be a little bit biased towards life,
Mhm.
but I also think like families should have free will. That's like, if they're married, they should have the right to procreate as much as they want. So if they want to have one kid, that's their prerogative. But if the government is forcing them to
Mhm.
regulate how much they procreate, it's like, don't you think that's a little bit of intrusion? Shouldn't they be able to make their own decisions? The government shouldn't make every single rule for them. So that's a law that I would change if the government ever gets to the point where they say, like, this person should be executed simply because they have brown hair. I don't know. I just think laws like that are the kinds that I would say, that's a bit unfair. Start doing some extroverted thinking.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Not a problem.
What are some minor things that annoy you?
I don't really like it when people are dishonest. Like, even if it's just a little white lie, that tends to just really aggravate me. Like, if I ask, and I've learned just not to ask this because people are such white liars. Like, if I say, oh, how are you today? They say, I'm fine, but they're not fine. Then I'll be like, why didn't you just answer honestly? Like, I don't want you to tell me something that's not true.
I can tell you why I don't answer honestly.
When people ask you that?
Yeah, because I don't want to explain it. Because it's like conceptual garbage, and then they're gonna be like, "I don't understand," and then it gets into it and like another conversation.
Well, I think for me, my way of getting around if that question has been asked to me, I say something else that I'm doing good on so that I don't have
Okay.
to say what's going on in the moment. So, like if someone says, how are you? And in the moment I'm doing terrible, I'll say, well, this new video game just came out and I'm really happy about it. And
Okay.
then I'll be honest about, like, yes, I am really excited about the video game. I'm just not excited about my current life situation. But
Yeah.
sometimes I don't want to talk about it right away. And maybe that's just an introvert thing. But I feel like for my emotions, I prefer to think about them first, then talk about them,
Mhm.
which is so in contrast with extroverted thinking because it's all about thinking as I talk. But with introverted feeling, it's more of, I'm sad right now, but I don't want everyone to know because I'll end up just saying, huh, a whole lot in the conversation. So I just stop myself from getting into that point. And I say, after doing some thorough thinking, and in some cases, several years of thinking, I can finally express my emotions. That's why, like, when I talk about, like, say, problems with my ex, people might say, dang, you're quite emotional for an ISTJ. I'll say, yeah, it only took me about 3 years to open up about that.
I
Yeah.
do a similar thing. To add to your point a bit about TE, I don't think it is specifically talking out loud. I think TE is looking at the purpose of things. That includes emotions, and that's how I visualize my emotions.
I also don't like when people say that just because someone is a thinker, that means they don't have emotions. Because
Mm.
usually when people ask questions like, are you in touch with your emotion? Are you an emotional person? I'll say, yes. I just don't always broadcast them and I don't always make decisions with them. Like I might feel very strongly about something, but then I'll think, is that really what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, for example, say there's a spider on the wall, and my family is deathly afraid of spiders, and I'm also kind of feeling a bit sick to my stomach because it's like, what if the spider bites me? What if I get like sick from the spider? But then I think, but if I let the spider live, then it could multiply, and that could end up creating more problems for the house, and the cobwebs could be more inconvenient, and my family could get bitten by the spider, and I don't want that. Then I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to toughen up and get the spider anyway. Or perhaps to give a better example, let's say that I see a homeless person who's begging for food. Now, my first instinct is obviously going to be, oh, that poor person, I bet they're starving. But then I think a second later and I say, no, wait a minute. I don't want to give them money because they could potentially use that money to get something that'll be ending up putting them in more harmful of a situation. Like they might gamble it on, say, a cigarette, which will end up possibly causing them lung cancer. It's like they have enough problems as it is. I don't want to make their life situation worse. So
Mm.
if I were to see a homeless person, I'd give them food because it's like, how do you abuse food? You eat it. But if you give them money, they could abuse that. So I
Mm.
would think not giving them money may seem like a harsh, like, oh my gosh, you cold, callous person. But it's more so of that, yes, I am feeling for them. I just think that there's a better way to feel for them, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense. Like compartmentalizing when I should use my emotions.
Yeah. What's a major thing that annoys you?
I don't like it when people are liars or when they're dishonest or when they're disloyal. Like if they're the type of person that like, say for example, gets married and then all of a sudden they're just like, yeah, we can't be friends anymore because I got to be with my spouse. It's like, whatever happened to our existing friendship? That would be annoying me. I also don't like it when people shout. I know I've been raising my voice quite a bit in this interview, but that's actually pretty tame compared to what I've seen from other people where they're like shouting if the slightest thing goes
Mm.
wrong. Like if someone stubs their toe, they're just like, for crying out loud, what the heck is going on? I'm just like, chill out. It's just a stubbed toe. It'll go away in a minute. Or if like someone forgets to buy something at the grocery store, I'll be like, okay, accidents happen. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I prefer to think, you know what? Maybe if the world actually stopped and thought, maybe there wouldn't be so much people getting annoyed at everything. And then I think the final thing that really irritates me to avoid me from going on too much of a tangent, because there's a lot of things that
Yeah, that's
annoy
fine.
me, I would say the biggest thing that annoys me is when people don't keep their promises. I would say that's a big thing because a lot of times when I arrange to do something with someone, I will oftentimes rearrange my schedule and will even like in my brain, I'll even say like, okay, usually I like to take a nap at this time of day, but I will readjust my schedule to make it at this time so that I can accommodate for the scheduling because that's not a norm, that's more of the exception. But
Mm.
then when that person's like, "Oh no, I just totally forgot and I didn't prioritize our hangout," I'll be like, "So you're telling me I missed my nap for nothing?"
It is very annoying.
Yeah.
I hate that as well.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely one of the first things we've touched on where all three of us can relate to. All being J types are just like, keep to the schedule, guys. Please just keep to the schedule.
Yeah. What do you enjoy? And I know we've asked how do you have fun, but what do you enjoy in life, I guess?
Yeah, because just because you enjoy something doesn't mean it's fun.
Yeah.
Like I could say I enjoy Ace Attorney, but that's a courtroom game where you present evidence, and that's not exactly fun, but it's
Yeah,
still
right.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I would say what I enjoy is brain stimulation.
Mhm.
I like activities where I can actually think, and I like activities where I can feel like I've solved something. So if, for example, for example, this week I'm babysitting my niece because my brother and my sister-in-law are going on a mini vacation.
Yeah, cool.
So if the baby is like crying and my mom says, "Hey, can you hold the baby for a minute so that I can do this other thing?" I'll say, "Okay, cool. I can do that." And then I feel accomplished because I said, "Oh, wow, I actually used my brain to hold out my arms." Or, well, I guess that's not too much of a brain taxing moment. That's more of like providing assistance because, we ISTJs are the butlers of the world. But I guess a better example would be, let's say that we are stuck in the middle of nowhere and we're trying to figure out, like, okay, what is the best solution? Then I'd say, well, I bet if we walked in one direction and we went based on where the sun is shining, then we could maximize the daylight by taking into account which area would have the most sunlight. So therefore, if we followed a certain direction that the sun is facing, that would give us greater odds of finding something within a visible radius. And then if we actually do find something, then I'll say, oh wow, I just used my brain.
Yeah,
And
cool.
to give one more example this is actually a true story. One time we were my best friend, my other friend and I, we were all hiking. And one of them was an ENTJ and one of them was an INTJ. So as you can probably mention, environmental awareness was not their forte.
I bet they were very competitive, though.
A bit, yeah. So as we were walking, we happened to get to an area of the woods where there are a lot of leaves on the ground. And even though I am a very observant person, like I tend to notice everything, at the same time, the leaves on the ground messed with my pattern of how I hike in that woods. Because I've been hiking there since I was a kid. And seeing it with a lot of leaves on the ground was something that I wasn't used to. So we ended up veering off the path, and then I guess you could say we kind of got lost. So they are just like, huh, what do we do? How are we going to get out of here? And I'm like, okay, stop for a minute. Let me tell you how basic hiking rules work. First of all, this is a nature reserve. So there's going to be trail markers because when the rangers are out here in the woods, they're going to want to know how to get back. So first off, we have to look for visible signs of identification. Second, there's a river. Obviously, the river will flow in one direction, and since we know that this is in proximity to the river that we walk by our youth group or by our young adult group, then all we have to do is keep a visual of where the river is in proximity to us at all times. So as long as we keep these two factors in mind, we should be able to get to an exit. And once we get to an exit, then we can use our familiarity with the landscape to find our way back to the car. And as we were walking, it took us a while because I was, following the landmarks and all that. And my INTJ best friend is like, "Oh, Paul, you're just leading us in the wrong direction. Why don't we just turn around and do another thing?" So I just turned to him, hands on my hips, and I said, "Can't you just trust my intuition for once?" Which I don't actually think is intuition in hindsight. I think it was just extreme awareness. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, we found the path, and I said, "You intuitives would have led us on a wild goose chase with your cluelessness." So that was an example of where my brain and my familiarity with hiking rules ended up saving the day, and then that gave me satisfaction because I said I solved a problem.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
cool.
also really enjoy tranquil, like relaxation times. Like I have insomnia at night, so doing stuff in the afternoon is really taxing for me. That's why I'm glad you guys did this in the morning because if we had done this more at like 3, I would be more like this and being
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Hi guys, let me just answer your questions in the most basic way possible." But because it's close enough tonight, I can be more animated
No, that's
and
cool.
people can say, Maybe he's not an ISTJ.
They
Maybe
will.
he's actually an
They will.
ESTP. Yeah, they will. I know it. They will.
Yeah.
But we haven't mentioned the functions a whole lot, and that's totally okay. But if we were to talk about the functions, they'd say, now he's an ISTJ, now that you brought in the functions.
Yeah. What do you look for in a relationship and why?
Well, I guess I can categorize them into two separate answers. So first, let's talk about friendship. What's important to me in a friendship is, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, loyalty, honesty, dedication. It helps if they're the same faith as me, but I have a couple of friends that aren't. So I would say that for me, what's good in a friendship is if it's consistent and if they don't have external parameters that get in the way of that friendship. Like, sure, we might have to make adjustments in the friendship. Like, say, I don't know, say my friend just had a baby. It's like, okay, obviously the baby requires more time, but that doesn't mean we have to stop being friends altogether. It just means we have to adjust to a
Mhm.
new way of being friends. I would also say that a friend is someone who can point out what I did wrong without worrying about hurting my feelings. Because a lot of times my lack of intuition and seventh function extroverted feelings is going to be like, huh, what? I hurt your feelings? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just didn't notice that that was feeling hurting worthy. So by pointing that out, that means that you were a good friend because you know that I like the honesty. Now, as far as romantic, now I should warn you, I'm not the type of person to be politically correct or be like, well, I'm going to downplay my answer so that no one gets hurt feelings. It's like, I'm just going to say
Yeah,
it like it is.
good.
And if your audience doesn't like it, then they shouldn't
Fun.
be watching this video. But it has to be a girl because I don't date other guys.
That's
Even if I wanted
that's
to.
totally
That's so
fair.
normal.
Yeah. It's like you're attracted to what you're attracted to.
I
And
mean, even if I was hypothetically gay, I would say that doesn't allow for procreation, so that is like not really worth it. I might as well just get a roommate if I'm really desperate for a gay relationship. I would also say that they have to be the type that's really, really patient, because I have very specific needs in my life, and I would need those needs to be met. But I would also want to make sure that they're honest about their own needs so that they can say, these are my boundaries. And I will not just randomly say to you, Paul, you annoyed me, and that's why I am giving you the cold shoulder. They
yeah.
can say ahead of time, like, okay, don't do this, don't say that. This is what is constituting crossing a line. Because there are times where people would say, like, this hurts my feelings, and I'll be like, does it really make sense for this to be hurting your feelings? Just because I said your hair was blonde, is that really that big of a deal? But
Yeah.
there are some things that are just like invading a person's personal space. And
Mm.
that is where I say, okay, that is more of a boundary break. And then I think the final thing that I'll mention here for the sake of brevity, because I could go on and on about what I need in a romantic partner. In fact, I actually wrote a Twitter message this big saying all of my needs. I would say the final thing that I really need in a romantic partner is long time commitment, because I wouldn't want to just go on a date with someone and then we find out that it doesn't work out. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh no, I guess we have to break up. And then I'll say, well, wait a minute. We had a good connection. Why don't we still stay friends? Then they'll be like, but my feelings for you are so strong that I cannot talk to you, Paul, and we must therefore break off. I'll be like, I shouldn't have dated you to begin with because you didn't want a connection. I would want to establish that there would be a lifelong connection, then date, because obviously nothing is 100% guaranteed. Obviously, there are things in life that are variables. Like, for example, when I was dating my ex, I thought that it was great. Then I found out she was cheating on me, and it's like that was something I couldn't have predicted because she was lying to me.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I thought we were going to be friends forever, but how am I supposed to react when then I find out she's pregnant from another guy? It's like,
Mm.
how was I supposed to predict that that was going to happen when we first dated? So you could say I learn from my mistakes and make sure that the person has a good track record and they're willing to be loyal and honest and not be doing stuff behind my back like she was.
What do you want to be known for?
Probably just that I tried my best.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not the type of person that measures success by what you've done,
Mhm.
but more so of, did you try your best? And did you have good intentions? And I would like to say that everything I've done has been with good intentions. Maybe I haven't always done everything exactly right. Maybe I've made mistakes. But I would say, generally speaking, as long as if my gravestone said he did his best, and maybe if someone were doing like a, whatchamacallit, starts with an E, I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Eulogy.
Eulogy, yes, that's it. If people were doing a eulogy of me at my funeral, I think it would go something like, when Paul was alive, he made sure that he always followed the rules to the T. He cared about people deeply, but even if he didn't know how to care about people precisely, he made sure that he always tried as best as he could with what he understood to maximize whatever it was that the person needed. So I guess you could say, as long as I gave it 100%, that's what I want people to know me for.
Yeah, cool. And last question, is there anything else you'd like to either people know about you or that you'd like people to know in general?
Well, I definitely hope they know that I have a YouTube channel, but you
Yeah.
said you'd put links in the description, so that's nice. But not everyone looks at links, so I'm glad I'm mentioning it again here.
Yeah.
I would also say I'd like people to know that I try really hard not to be a criminal. And that's one thing that's really been bothering me lately is that I chaperone a lot. But because chaperoning naturally involves minors, that can get some people to naturally, and I'm sure the intuitive types are already doing this, saying like, "Oh no, does this person secretly have a thing for minors?" It's like, no, I don't. I'm always very mindful of not being one of those people. If I exhibit tendencies and someone points it out, then I don't do that again to make sure that I make it perfectly clear I'm just here as a chaperone. I'm here as a teacher. I don't want
Yeah.
anything ulterior motive. And I really don't want people to think that I have ulterior motives in anything for that matter. So I want people to know that I always have good intentions and I don't want to break the rules. I don't want to be a criminal. People just take wording the wrong way, and I really hope that doesn't happen. So,
I
guys,
I don't think you're into kids.
No, but I think it can be really hard, especially for men, to just do anything with children that aren't your own because people will automatically assume bad things.
That's
It's,
probably true.
yeah,
you
because
know,
like one time I was at the park and I was just observing how cute the kids were, and one person was just like, "You better get out of here before people start
yeah,
thinking bad things." And I was just like, "I'm just
yeah,
observing that the
yeah,
way children act with the world is cute," and I
yeah.
wasn't
Women can
thinking
do it, and it's fine. And but
Yeah, that's
men will
true.
get judged straight away.
I guess if you say that, they'll probably like reach unkind conclusions.
Yeah, and that's what I don't like is when people make an assumption, but then they don't follow up by asking questions and saying like maybe my assumption was wrong. I
Yeah,
mean,
Mm.
you know the saying, assumption means you're making a donkey out of you and me.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for answering the questions. I'm really
Yeah,
glad that we persisted and we got to talk to you. So
much appreciated. I do hope I managed to be what it was that you expected and that I didn't blab too much.
no, that was perfect. Like
Well,
it was really nice to just see how you would answer those questions. So
the point of the channel is to observe how types answer questions.
yeah,
So you can't get it wrong.
yeah, and so
Okay, that's
a
good.
really
Glad to
good
hear it.
example of your type in that way. So
Hmm.
Very good. Well, I'm grateful you guys pursued me, and if I could make a quick pitch for a moment, audience, if you really like Myers-Briggs, I think you'll really like my channel. Just know that that's not the focus
yeah,
of my channel. I know a lot of people subscribe for my Myers-Briggs stuff, especially because very few ISTJs talk about it, but I also hope that if you're a gamer, like I'm just as passionate about that, if not more. I mostly do reviews, so if you're ever uncertain about a game on Nintendo system, I'm the guy to talk to.
yeah, cool. And we'll link it down below so people can find you. And we've
Much
matched it.
appreciated.
So thanks for that. And if you got anything out of that, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, audience.